Hi, I'm Ida McVicker, and this is Kelly Johnson-Nikondeha, and we're here. We were talking this morning on Hey Tell, just checking in with each other, connecting on this Good Friday. And I was trying to give expression to a post, to write something on Good Friday, and just finding myself, where am I in this story? And as Kelly was talking about her experience of Good Friday, I just felt, well, maybe we should make this a more public conversation because she had so much good stuff to say. So I said, can we Skype? And so here we are, trying to give expression to what does Good Friday mean to us and where do we find ourselves in this story. So, Cal.
Well, I think for me it's always a bit of an oxymoron to say Good Friday because, of course, we know that the day wasn't really good. Mm-hmm. It certainly wasn't good the day that it happened. Yeah. There was so much bewilderment and confusion and sadness for the followers of Jesus because this is not what they expected. And and Jesus dying on the cross was certainly not something we immediately think of as being good. And yet our current nomenclature calls it good, and I think we frame it because we know that it has redemptive purpose, that we know what happened on Sunday. So we can say, wow, it's good. But actually, to experience it and to honor it, I think, today actually isn't very good. It feels really sad and really confusing. And so Good Friday has always been an ironic statement to me.
Yeah. I've personally, this Easter week, I felt like I've just been trying to walk this out as I've watched a really good friend of mine kind of walk her own suffering, and just I'm just trying to find my place in the story and seeing, as I was thinking about Jesus doing his walk to the cross, and I'm finding myself in the crowd, and it's not necessarily the place I want to be. I want to be right with, but it's this is my journey of wanting to bring the cross closer, and not being a spectator, not being a bystander, but being a participant in the story of Easter. And so it's been particularly poignant for me just because of somebody in my really close circle who's suffering. And so I don't know, I feel like Easter is taking on a whole different dimension this year for me too, just watching her walk this out with such courage too, and such strength too. It's like she's almost like my Jesus walking out her journey, right? And I'm watching it. I think as we were talking, one of the things that I've struggled with Easter and specifically with my Christianity was this idea of the cross and what the prominent role that the cross has in our faith, right? And people talk, just take it to the cross, and Jesus died on the cross, and I was like, but what does it mean? What does that mean for me? And for me, I was like, I could talk about those words, but they were always distant. They were out there. There were words on a page. There were words maybe in my mouth, but mostly in other people's mouths. And I was like, God, I cannot make this my own. I need to understand what this cross means. Like, what did it mean when Jesus died on a cross? And so that was there was a period of months probably more, that I struggled. And it's like, I want to know this. I want to understand it and bring it close. And so I was living in Taiwan and walked into a bookstore, and it was called Islit. Beautiful, one of my favorite little oases in Taiwan. And beautiful wooden floors, and I don't know, I just picked up this one book, and it was all about shapes, and it's called The Signs of Life. And it had circles and stars, and I flipped to the page that had the cross on it, and I picked it up from my bookshelf this morning, just thinking about the cross, and I still have it, and it's precious to me. Because for that moment, I looked at this symbol, and it says the equidistant cross, and it means relationship. And in that moment, it was like this speaking of, okay, the cross means relationship. It's vertical, the vertical line, but it's also the horizontal line. And it's God with me, my relationship with God. And blessed in the vertical relationship, even Jesus' position on the cross, right? It's connecting us, like, person to person, humanity to, each of us connecting with each other, friend to friend, right? And so for me, it was like this intersection right there in that moment of, okay, this is what the cross means. And if Jesus died on this cross, in that moment, it was just this full surrender to connection. I feel like that's what it was for me.
Wow. Just as you're talking, I'm thinking of that picture of the cross, that place right in the middle where the beams meet. You know, to me, I've been reading about shalom, and it's almost like, yeah, and right there is shalom. You know, where the vertical and the horizontal are in complete connection. That's where there's this utter shalom and wellness and wholeness.
Yes.
And it's only when both of those relationships come together. And it is interesting that sometimes it's in places of pain.
Yeah.
Richard Rohr says it's where there's great love or great pain, you know, that we move forward in our spiritual journey. And that's interesting, that there's perfect shalom right at the center of the cross.
I don't know. Yeah. And just, just meeting that, and not standing distance from the cross then. Like for me, that was like, now I can find my place in the cross. Like, not on the cross necessarily, because Jesus is the one who took that place, but as I meet Jesus in that place, I can find also my, freedom, like we talked about, just, so it very much for me is also a symbol of then freedom, where I can find that shalom, like that peace, right, where things come to peace, come to shalom, and no more, nothing broken, nothing missing, right?
Yep.
So when the things that are broken in my life, when I bring it to that place, surrender it to that, and just finding an experience, really, like in moments in prayer where it is an experience of freedom, very much where I surrender the brokenness in my life or the woundedness in my life, where I've come to that place and I was like, okay, Jesus, I can't bear this, but you have already, so please take it. And then it's like release. There's a moment, definitely, a transaction.
So for you, the cross has then become, the symbol is relationship and wholeness and freedom. Yeah?
Very much so.
I think for me, the cross is, I've always felt like there's something missing. I've been, raised in the church, and of course have heard all about the cross and its salvific efficacy, how it moves us forward in that story. And of course today on my Facebook page, all my friends are, these great pictures of the 3 crosses and the meaning of the cross, and a lot of language about the sacrifice that Jesus did. But I always felt that the story was somewhat incomplete. Like there was something that I wasn't quite getting. And I think in the last few years, I finally got it, at least for me, which was that there was this social reality happening, that, Jesus was this person of peace. He was the embodiment of God's justice in the world, shalom walking. And that when you walk that way, when you live that way, you come up against, we'd say, the domination systems. You come up against the status quo in the world. And that is a place of pain. It's a place where, the world doesn't want us to live nonviolent, justice-seeking. That in Jesus' day, he was killed like a terrorist. Crucifixion was for terrorists. And he died between 2 bandits. Now, they both embraced violent revolution. But of course, here he is in the center, the non-violent revolutionary. But to me, that helped unlock something when I realized that he died as a freedom fighter, as a terrorist, because he was pursuing a different kingdom agenda, the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of Rome, right? And so all of a sudden I started working back in the Passion story, and it started to kind of make more sense. It's like, wow, he always told the disciples that he was headed towards Jerusalem. He always told them he was headed right into the crosshairs of the empire, and that there was going to be suffering, but they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to suffer that way, and I don't blame them. But the one who got it was the woman who anointed his feet, the unnamed woman who, broke open that alabaster jar, and she saw where he was going and basically said, I'm with you. And really, she was the first Christian. She was the first one who followed Jesus where he said he was going. And then of course all his language is follow me, come with me. It's not I'm a substitution so much as you participate with me in the direction I'm going, in the justice I'm seeking, and in the suffering that is part of that. And somehow in all of that, the cross started to make more sense. That it became a symbol of where the just person is headed. Of course, on Sunday, that's redeemed, right? On Sunday, God steps in and resurrects him and says, justice does win. My kingdom does win. And so, I don't know, it really helped me in thinking about being a just person. And Walter Brueggemann says a bodied faith.
I love that.
It's to live that bodied faith and to pursue justice.
Yes.
I'll go in the direction of Jesus, like Dorothea, the direction of the cross. But that my suffering is redeemed. So I don't know, somehow that helped me get closer to what I think is happening on Good Friday and to be able to celebrate the justice of Jesus on Friday.
That's beautiful. I love what you're saying about the women who anointed his feet, and that she came close, right? Like there was a closeness. It was like she also bust through the societal norms, the status quo, and she came in beside the fact that people were going to mock her, and so she decided, I'm going to do it, anyway, and she busts through, and she goes and sits at his feet, and she takes her place there and positions herself. And for me, even this journey for me, like I think as I process this today and as I have this week, for me is very much that, how can I come closer? Like, how can I not just stand in the crowd, but how can I position, how can I be that bodied faith that you just said? How can I not just be a spectator, a bystander, an observer, but how do I, with who I am, come close?
Yes.
And not suffer necessarily with Jesus, because he has suffered, and yet taking on and understanding and, I don't know, coming close, right? So I just want to get closer to that understanding too, right? For me,
he does say that we participate in his sufferings. I mean, Paul says that we're invited to participate. That somehow we share in that with Jesus, and I think it's as we pursue justice as he did.
Carry our cross, right?
Exactly. But we also pursue the cross, and that means we also end up at odds with the kingdom of our day, and yet we know that redemption is coming. We know that resurrection is also part of that story.
I think for me it's being mindful of what keeps me from being with, right? Okay. And then also understanding that my with is not necessarily the same as somebody else's with. Like how I participate in the story. For me, as I watch my friends suffer, I realize I'm not the person that they call to come and be with her in the hospital. I'm like, I want to be that person. I'm not the person that maybe somebody calls and says, come make 350 goodie bags. Like, I'm not that person. Sometimes I want to be that person. And I think for me, I was like, so what does my clothes look like? And I was like, I'm trying to process this. I'm trying to figure out how is my action? How can I become the woman who sits at Jesus' feet and pours out her life and opens up my alabaster jar, my most precious? And I think for me, it's been, okay, how can I minister with my words? Right? I think maybe my cross is that sometimes words feel distant. Sometimes words feel, or my process feels distant in the, like it's not close enough. Like it actually needs to, I need to be at the feet. I need to be right there going and buying the spices. And I think sometimes I would be there thinking about, what just happened? Let me process this. Whereas I'm like, I think the cross invites me to be close, and I need to figure out what is my closeness. Are my words enough? Is it, or how can I come closer as I walk with somebody who is suffering? Because for me, that's been I think that's my struggle, that I don't want to stand on the sidelines. I want to be right in there, and I want to walk with her, and not just be the observer, right? I don't. That's my cross that I'm carrying, I feel like, on this Easter Friday, just processing through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, if I were to think, where am I in the story today? Um, I want, to be a person of justice in the world, and Claude and I work um, with friends in Burundi and advocating for human rights and all of those good things. But the reality is that when you move that direction, you're going to encounter, blowback, right? And not to be scared of that. I think sometimes, the stories are good and positive and exciting when we see justice happening, but there's often the reality that there's pushback, and to not be afraid of that. For me, it's like realizing that is part of the way of justice. It's part of the arc of justice, and to not be afraid to follow me to where I'm going. Don't be afraid. That there will be pain. There can be, but that there will be redemption, and to not be afraid to go that way. Even knowing what may lie ahead, in a sense, to be like that woman who said, "I know where you're going, and I'm going to anoint you for your burial now." Because I mean, I get to do it later, but I'm going to anoint you now. And in a sense, are we willing to be Messiah? Are we willing to be anointed now for burial? Yeah, I don't know. To not be afraid of the direction that the life of justice takes us. To not be afraid of the cross.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I just, coming back to that point of the meeting place, right there, us with God, and then us with each other, right? That just human, standing in humanity, wanting to draw down heaven to earth, and just having to, I guess for me, I was like, I just want to position myself in that place, and it's a vulnerable place. It's a hard place. It's not a place that has all the answers yet, right? It's a journey, right? The journey through that. But yeah, so I mean, I guess the question for others would be like, where do you find yourself in the story on Easter Friday, on Good Friday?
Right.
And just to think through that, and we'd love to hear your comments or your feedback, or just share some of your story if you like.
Yes.
Okay, my friend. Shalom.
Shalom on this Holy Friday.
Yes. Peace. Thank you.